from Anthony Goldblum. A new survey suggests TikTok is a meaningful driver of a surge in anti-Semitism.
Okay, first my first question is, how is anti-Semitism defined?
Oh, well, wait for this. Spending at least 30 minutes a day on TikTok increases the chances a respondent holds anti-Semitic or anti-Israel views by 17%, compared with 6% for Instagram and 2% for X. And then the actual graph puts on the graph, this is the relationship between platform usage and anti-Semitic / anti-Israel views.
Yeah.
It's almost like if they were the same thing, you wouldn't have to keep doing that clumsy slash thing.
Exactly.
This is not a good survey. But so my question would be, was the question asked in the survey document, like, or rather whatever like the criteria was it measured as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic separately, and then they combined them in the after? Or did they just and like because one was very high and one was very low, it was clear? Or were the two conflated in the intake, like or sort of the input as well? Because I mean, either one is terrible. But
luckily, this person
bad this is.
Right. So there's still a lot of this data to look through here, but someone has pulled the raw data and plotted some of the specific questions, because basically they asked very specific questions, and this chart that we just pulled up is like an amalgamation of all those questions. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Semitic. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Israel, but those are, like we were just saying, are two distinct things. And you could pull up that other post that I put in there. It's the one I posted before. It accidentally sent twice. I don't know why, but it's the same tweet.
Okay, but these are the questions. Do you want me to read it? Because I have it on the big screen. Compared to other to other groups, Jewish people have to the Holocaust just to further their political agenda. Jewish people chase money more than other people do. I mean, that's obviously anti-Semitic. But then here we go. Israel and its supporters are a bad influence on our democracy. Israel can get away with anything because its supporters control the media. And Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. Now, I mean, those final three there clearly are related to Israel's assault on Gaza, I would say.
Right.
But
if you look at the chart, though, pull it back up, Bradley.
But the two media ones, though, I want to say, like, the first one is anti-Semitic because it's about Jewish people. Israel supporters controlling the media isn't explicitly about Jewish people. It can be, right? But it can also be about the fact that...
Like, I don't know if Dana Bash is Jewish. She's an Israel supporter.
Right. I mean, but like our national security establishment and like the white Western power structure has oversized influence in the media, and they are pro-Israel. That's what I would say about that.
Right.
I would also say that it's not surprising that there's a lot of anti-Semitism in America or online or being diffused out there, considering, you know, again, this is the United States of America. I think that's just like to be taken. I think you still shouldn't conflate it with genuine anti-Israel statements and like pro-Palestinian statements at that.
Right. So if you look at that chart, though, you'll see that for pretty much every question, there's this green line that's at the very bottom. Now, the x-axis is time spent on. So the more time spent on, the more or less someone agrees with those views. Now, that green line is on the bottom for almost every single one. That green line is the TikTok data. The blue line that's on top for almost every single one, that's Twitter.
X. Yeah, Twitter. Yeah. And the ones at the top, the more explicitly anti-Semitic ones, if we can put that back up here. Oh, it is. Sorry. Like you see that Twitter is at the top of every category, but also there's a decrease in the TikTok line there for the most explicitly anti-Semitic ones.
Right. So the more time you spend on TikTok, apparently, the less anti-Semitic you get, unless you conflate the Israel ones on the bottom there, where you see that TikTok rises as you spend more time on there. And because that's really an effect of TikTok being a community that skews very young. It's from its very earliest days. People seem to forget that TikTok started when ByteDance wanted to roll out a US version of TikTok because they have their own one in China. And to do so, they bought another app, another company called Musical.ly, which was basically an app for like young kids and teens to like record themselves lip syncing to music. And they bought that app and they rebranded it as TikTok. So from its very founding, it was already skewing very young. It continues to skew young. And we know young people have pro-Palestine views. I mean, it's not really a chicken or an egg scenario because you could probably find young people who aren't on TikTok who have the same pro-Palestine views. The people are using TikTok to share the views they already hold, and those views just happen to be pro-Palestine.
I would also
go ahead.
I was wanting to point out that I think that it's unfair for the X chart not to control for Elon Musk. Because I feel like if you just like remove him from the data set, the chart that line goes down like at least 90%.
What if you control for blue checks? Then we're like seeing
it's the least racist platform. It's the least racist platform online.
Oh yeah. Stella the dog writes in saying, "Wow, guys, your anti-Semitism is showing. Jews control the media is anti-Semitism. Israel is Nazis is anti-Semitism. Just wow." I think I literally said that the Jews control the media one is anti-Semitic.
Is anti-Semitism, yeah.
And I don't agree.
But that is a distinct point. Then the media supporters support the state of Israel as it's constructed now, or are as shorthand Zionists, and that is not to say anything about their religion. There's plenty like
Christian
Mike Huckabee
Zionists.
is a Zionist.
Yes.
When I say Zionist, I use Zionist because guess what? Like I don't want to say Israeli, despite the fact that Israeli society is very hawkish with regards to Palestinians. I don't want to say Israelis because there's lots of Israelis that don't support it.
Yeah.
But I do say Zionist because whether you're a liberal Zionist or a right-wing Zionist, I do think like that is the most precise label, despite what people have. And I'll admit, like when I first got into this business, I was skittish about using that word because it has been decoded by the same media we're talking about as meaning anti-Semitism. Surprise, IMer. That's the entire conversation we're having right now as 17,000 Palestinians are killed, right?
And I just want to also say, too, like Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. I mean, I don't think that that's anti-Semitic at all. Like you can say it's hyperbolic and you can say that we should be careful because obviously
and it doesn't rise to the level of Holocaust yet.
Yeah, I mean, the Holocaust, 6 million people, 6 million Jews were killed. Like that is one of the worst crimes in the history of the world, if not the worst crime. But to say that Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews, if you just want to refer to crimes of genocide, well, take it up with Roz Siegel and other scholars, literal Holocaust scholars who say that these are crimes of genocide.
Well, and you also have Zionists saying that actually Hamas is the Nazis, which is also a ludicrous comparison. So, yeah, I mean...
Douglas Murray said that the Nazis didn't actually take any pleasure in killing Jews during the Holocaust. They drank themselves almost to death because of how guilty they felt.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu says that that Hitler got the idea of extermination from the Palestinian Grand Mufti, which is a complete lie and conspiracy theory meant to continuously, dehumanize the Palestinians and make it so that like people in Israel and others believe that the Palestinians are a greater threat to them than Nazis. It's a complete exploitation of the generational trauma of the Holocaust. So I hope that clears it up for you.
Yeah, like obviously the statement Jewish people talk about the Holocaust just to further political agenda, that is blatantly anti-Semitic. The state of Israel does cynically use the legacy of the Holocaust towards ends. And I'm sorry, you can't have a grown-up conversation about this nation state that we give billions of dollars worth of bombs to unless you are willing to be grown up about that, frankly.
I mean, Stella the dog is continuously writing in saying you guys should visit the Holocaust Museum. You have no understanding of how the term Zionist was used to perpetuate the Holocaust. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I'll never forget seeing all the shoes lined up together. And I went there as a kid. And it's one of the, as I just said, it is, if not arguably, one of the worst crimes that humanity has ever engaged in, if not the worst.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's distinct.
But Zionism, conflating Zionists with Judaism is
I think it is fucking offensive.
It is
to say
offensive.
that what we're doing is actually preparing the ground for more killing, because I think actually that's what Zionists are doing right now. And all these games that we're playing, we have to be super sensitive about how we describe the killing of. I mean, who is it? Nick Kristof, not a leftist by any sense of imagination, is saying. I'm not sure where. What's his name from Current Affairs got this quote from, where Nick Kristof is publishing. But he writes, I'm just trying to pull it up here, that the comparison is, oh yeah, here it goes. Nick Kristof, no less, says that the massacre of Gazan civilians is comparable to the Rwandan genocide. So I guess maybe let's take it out of the context of World War II. Rwanda. Congratulations, Israel. That's the comparison now. If fine, maybe World War II and Nazis and the Holocaust plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize foreign policy stuff. Well,
it plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize. I mean, if genocides can only be considered genocides when they rise to the level of the Holocaust, then oh my God, are we in a world that I don't even want to be in? Because genocides happen at smaller scales. We just had a guest on to talk about genocide in Sudan. So crimes of genocide are crimes of genocide, and that's
we are not sitting at the table for another Holocaust. Our Secretary of State is going around the Middle East saying, "Hey, we're trying to ethnically cleanse these Palestinians out of this state of Israel. Do you want to take them?" That's where we're at now. And so these phantoms that actually were doing another Holocaust, I'm sorry, that is a product of propaganda. And that is Israel itself has used that cynically. So I'm sorry, I don't take instruction on this.
And let me also just say too, that I believe that the conflation of Zionism with Judaism is inherently anti-Semitic. It's like saying that the only real form of being a Muslim is to be a religious fundamentalist or a religious nationalist. The only form of being a Christian is to be a Christian nationalist. That is playing right into the hands of the most extreme members of a religion or of an ethnicity, and it's been used by the Israeli government to cover for their crimes.
It's being used right now.
Yeah.
Right now, where's Benjamin Netanyahu saying, look at all these protests in the West. We need to push back on that. That's the pushback.
Yeah.
The pushback is Stefanik pretending any sort of chant saying intifada is actually, no, we want a second Holocaust, as opposed to a resistance to a colonization. It's a deliberate misinterpretation for a hysterical propaganda value. That's what we're seeing right now from people who are killing civilians by the thousands.
Gerald from New Orleans says, funny how the accusations of anti-Semitism roll in on a day when Sam isn't in. I'm sure that's a total coincidence. Well, yeah.
I'm here though.
Yeah,
and
there you are.
I'm Ashkenazi Jewish, so I mean.
There you go. There you go. I didn't know that actually.
I typically don't bring it up because I don't I don't think it matters. I should be able to criticize Israel, and I should be able to be against the being anti-Zionist, because fundamentally Zionism is a right-wing sort of ideal. Without a doubt. It's looking to create. It's a nationalist movement. It's looking to create a state for a specific that puts a specific group of people above everybody else. We're not fine with Saudi Arabia. We're not fine with other fundamentalist Muslim countries.
And sorry to jump in, Binder, but we also say that country has too much influence on our politics.
Yes.
Right. And here in the U.S., most even resistance libs, just the anti-Trump people, they see Republicans, the hardcore Christian Republicans, and they call them the American Taliban and all those other ridiculous things they call them, because Christian fundamentalism is rightly seen as a far right-wing thing, a far right-wing ideal that we want nothing to do with. But for some reason, when it comes to Zionism, it's fine for certain people to have that feeling. It's fine for that. It's the equivalent to that right-wing Christian nationalism. It's the equivalent to fundamentalist, hardcore Islamic ideals and movements. They all overlap. It's the same thing, just for that particular religion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Judt, I'm sure you're familiar with this piece, Binder, but Tony Judt in New York Review of Books, 2003, called Israel the Alternative. I'll just read a little bit. Here it is. In a world where nations and peoples increasingly intermingle and intermarry at will, where cultural and national impediments to communication have all but collapsed, where more and more of us have multiple elective identities and would feel falsely constrained if we had to answer to just one of them, in such a world, Israel is truly an anachronism, and not just an anachronism, but a dysfunctional one. In today's clash of cultures between open pluralistic democracies and belligerently intolerant faith-driven ethnostates, Israel actually risks falling into the wrong camp. To convert Israel from a Jewish state to a binational one would not be easy, though not quite as impossible as it sounds a little bit later. The process has already begun de facto, but it would cause far less disruption to most Jews and Arabs than its religious and nationalist foes will claim. In any case, no one I know has a better idea. Anyone who genuinely supposes that the controversial elective fence... people should read that piece, because it's exactly what Binder said. It's an ethno-state. There was say, defensible reasons for constructing that, or that, like, the world powers pursued that project after the Holocaust, obviously, despite the fact that colonial projects were going out of fashion then. But it failed, and it failed the exact same way. I'm sorry, you watch the Battle of Algiers. This is the exact same way these fail. And you need to have a different relationship. And obviously the relationship with Israelis and Palestinians is different between the French and Algeria. Because I do think, like, as Ilan Pappy says, there is, despite, like, objectively being a settler colonial project, that people there now, the Israelis, the Jewish settlers, have an organic tie to the land. So that's why we don't say, like, actually they all have to be removed or pushed out to the sea, for instance. That's not our position. Our position is that everybody lives and has full political rights.
A multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy.
Simple.
Yeah.
Less nationalism.
All right. Well, I think we covered that bunk. What do you call whatever that was study that was referenced by Nikki Haley last night? That
it is amazing though that, like, there was a quote the other day. Apparently, Joe Biden at, like, some sort of campaign stop or something. I think he was in, like, Massachusetts. He said he was a Zionist, which, I mean, obviously he is. But, like, the idea that, like, disagreeing with that Irish Catholic means you're an anti-Semite is ludicrous. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, when I say Zionist, I mean Joe Biden.
Yes.
But also,
hold on. I feel like Brandon wants to jump in. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only thing I was going to add was I think we also have to understand that we live in a world where identity is often very atomized, especially since, like, the neoliberal project has removed, like, material conditions and large structural changes from people's understanding of how to actually, like, uplift and empower minority communities. Now what you have is an understanding of people as, like, belonging to either oppressed groups or groups that are inherently capable of being the oppressor. And a lot of people just have a really hard time understanding, despite throwing around, like, words like intersectionality, that kind of stuff is fluid. That in Israel, it's very possible that they, by nature of living in an ethno state of their own creation, are actively oppressing Arab minority because of their background, and Jewish people can still be an ethnic minority in the world at large, and even a protected group in some countries where they're the ethnic minority. And those two things aren't really in contradiction to one another. It's just about the context that these things exist within. But in the United States, I think a lot of people, it's the whole, like, how can Kamala Harris be bad for Black people? She is Black argument. It's a way for people to, obscure the larger conditions of what we're talking about by just, like, referencing someone's or one part of someone's identity. And so, it's something that we just have to get over, because it's very easy for people to, in this case, adopt Zionism as their sort of, like, identity, even if they're, like, Christians or Catholics, and then become a mouthpiece for an oppressed group that is supposed to, like, short circuit any real conversation.